Hello again, guys and girls, the GOWJ community. Welcome back to another GOWJ Judgment gameplay commentary. Almost said GOWJ 3 there. What you're watching is a sexy domination gameplay, and I love saying sexy when I talk about my gameplays, because when I get a nice one, that's how I describe it. But yeah, so yeah, it's a domination gameplay on purpose. That's what I've been going for recently, because I needed a nice long gameplay to talk about this subject. So what is the subject I speak of? Well, I wanted to talk about GOWJ Judgment in a competitive light, and just in general, what's good about it, what's bad about it, what can be improved, and my general opinion on it as a whole. What is GOWJ Judgment competitive when you put it all together? So, I think I'm going to start with the things I like about it, the things that they've changed which could make a real improvement. And I hate to say this, but the loadout system tends to be a bit iffy. It tends to be, well, it is good, but it is bad. But in general, I think the loadout system helps define players more as they go in, but it also restrains people. But when you put it together as a whole, I think the loadout system is better for competitive, because when you go into a match, it helps diversify the game. It helps make people actually make good decisions about what they're going to start with. It adds a little bit more to the meta. It adds a little bit more to strategy. To, you know, we're going to have a support player, and this is what he's been playing for months on end, and he's really good at support. He knows what he's doing. He's great with the Lancer. He's great with power weapons and things like that. And then you're going to have the guy with the Nasher. Now, his objective, you know, you've got a domination match. He needs to move around the map, break rings, so the support players can come in and lock it down while he moves to the next one, breaks that, blah, blah, blah. So, I think as a whole, it adds more than it takes away. Competitively, at least, it adds more than it takes away by putting the new loadout system into the game, and I think that's a plus. I really do. Now I'm trying to think of the other things which are good, but it's really hard because not that much changed. But I think as a whole, the general gameplay, the faster paced game modes, so definitely domination. That was a plus in general. I do have a few little gripes with domination. Like, I think it's too difficult to come back from a bad loss, because when you push one ring, they spawn on the other, and then they cap that ring. And, you know, they're 40 points ahead with 10 points to go, but you've got like 30 points to go. And no matter what, they're always, and you're never going to be able to push by yourself, but if you push together, they'll spawn where you last came from. And it's really difficult, but as a whole, the game mode, it pushes a lot more strategy. It pushes people to be better at rotating through rings. It pushes people to have better setups, because you're not holding one corner of the map like you were in King of the Hill. So it forces more teamwork and strategy in the game, just because the fact is you have to do more than just set up and hold a ring then move to the next one. You have to constantly be breaking rings. You have to constantly be setting up for different rings. You have to rotate to help teammates. The game's constantly changing, but like I said, the downside to it is it's kind of difficult to come back from a bad game. So once you get once a team starts getting ahead, and it can be quite difficult to get ahead, but once a team does start getting ahead, it's kind of set in stone. And it takes away from the clutch factor a bit, because, you know, maybe someone could push into a ring and he could do a 1v4 and it would be amazing, but he'd still lose the match because he can't change any of it. So, as a whole, I think that domination is a good thing as in a whole for Judgment. It is a really great game mode. And the spawning system, while it's not great, and it does, like, it annoys me in the way that it spawns people on top of rings, It's a lot better than it was in Gears of War 3 with the King of the Hill spawn system, where you'd spawn on a hill 10 seconds before it actually appeared there, and then you just cap the hill, and then you just hold it down, and it'd be like, oh, what's the point? But yeah, I mean, it does add a lot. But I think as a whole for Judgment, there are little things that add to the games, and there are little things which add to competitive, but this is the bad part, because I come into this and I just sit there and I feel like there's a lot more bad things in the game than there are good. So let's just go into the bad bit. So what can we think? Well, the grenades. Amazing idea, amazing concept. It could have been brilliant, and I talked about this a long time ago about how these grenades would really add to competitive, and they really still do have that potential, but they don't. They're really imbalanced. The ideas behind them doesn't really help. The things like smoke stunning, it just serves for an annoyance, and it doesn't really serve any strategic purpose. It's just like you throw a smoke stun, it stuns them, you run at them, you shoot them. You know, then you have the stim grenade. Well, it's supposed to be used tactically so you can revive teammates or help them when they're in a bad situation. How are they used? You throw them at someone, you run at them, and then you stand just outside of body range or meat chunk range, or whatever you like to call it. You stand a little bit outside of one-shot range, and you sit there and you pump shots into them. And there's nothing they can do about it. And then you have the ink grenade. It does serve quite a tactical purpose. It does serve that strategic purpose, but it serves it far too well. It's a little bit overpowered. You run 2 feet into it and you're instantly dead. There's no way to get around it. So, and the fact that it's random, it just takes away quite a lot. When you put a random factor into anything, it instantly takes away from the competitive side of it, because it can't be competitive if it's random. You know, if something is competitive and you throw an ink grenade and you know exactly how big the cloud will be, you know exactly how it will affect a certain area, then that makes it competitive. But if you throw an ink and you hope that it will do what you want it to, but then maybe it doesn't, and then that screws you over, and then people come up and they kill you, well, that's just your major problem, isn't it? That's just like, that just takes it away. And then the spot grenades, I think they're the only ones that really serve their proper strategic, can't even speak now, proper strategic purpose, but I just think they don't really have enough of a purpose to be called on that much. Maybe one player might use it in a match, but not that much. So yeah, they serve their purpose, but they're not powerful enough, basically. I mean, there's not really any way you could make a weapon that doesn't harm the other player in any way, or doesn't affect the other player in any way. There's not really any way you could make it more powerful, but, you know, that's just how they are. So, that's just a little thing, and there are, like I said, with the good things, there's a lot of little bad things, but for me, there is one massive nail in the coffin that's holding down competitive, and that is the maps. The one thing that we cannot change, the one thing that we cannot restrict players or make players do something about, the one thing that is completely out of our hands is the maps. So basically, the problem is the maps were designed for free-for-all, and I know you lot must have heard this if you're at all into competitive gaming, or competitive Gears rather. If you're at all into this kind of scene, then you must have heard it from people like Arctic, on things like Active Reload, or any other competitive player. The maps just don't suit competitive because they're not designed for team versus team, basically. They're designed for free-for-all, and that's simple, and that's a fact. Whether that was intentional or not, maybe Epic tried to make the maps more fair, give them a bit of a free-for-all edge, but try and make them fair enough for team versus team. That's great and all, but they just don't work in team versus team because, one, the spawning, it's completely uneven. When one team spawns on one side of the map, they have to run, 15 seconds to their first power weapon, or the other team has to run like 3 seconds to their power weapon. the team has to, like, you have the main power weapon, which is kind of in the middle of the map, but it's not. You know, like, you have things like the boom shot on library, where one team gets to it about 5 seconds before the other, and the best the other team can hope is that they can possibly lance the player down from up top before they get there. It's just like, it really doesn't work. So what we need for competitive to work at all is decent maps, and that calls for DLC, and that's not good. Because when you need DLC just for the game to work competitively, that just stifles the game from the beginning. It completely cripples its potential, and it sets it back. Players drop off, they leave, the game loses its population for competitive gaming. You know, it doesn't help it in any way. And this is the main point I'm trying to get, is when you're designing a game that's main theme is team versus team, you don't focus on stupid things like free-for-all. I mean, I know it was a brand new attraction to the game. It was like, oh yeah, it's the first time Gears has ever done free-for-all. But you just don't do it, else it cripples the other game modes, and it just makes it horrifying to play. But yeah, that's my opinion. Basically, the game is really bad for competitive right now because of one main thing, and that's the maps. But I think I've ran out of time here, so I'm just going to quickly sign off. So anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the commentary, or if you enjoy my commentaries in general, please leave me a like and subscribe. But for now, guys, thank you for watching, and goodbye.